a really great lecturer, a really great person. So I met Dolores, and now I'm going to kill the second name, Mallea. I'm sorry. A year ago. But I followed her and her career before that through common friends. And what I find fascinating about what she does is that she's a good example of what we all, I think, need to be in these times, that we cannot do one job, hope that that job earns us enough money and gives us a spot in the world, that we need to be flexible and curious. And she has all these aspects in herself, the way how she runs her company, the fact that she teaches people in prison, that she teaches young people, that she has different ideas how to teach and slowly guide young people to the point where she gives them responsibility to do their own work. So for those young people here in the room, become friends with her, she's good at that. She makes furniture, vessels, objects. She's trained as an architect. She fell in love with woodworking. So she's done a lot of different things which you can see all come together very well. But she keeps being curious and extending and looking around. So I think she's an amazing role model for all of us, how we should live and think and work and the risks we should take, because I think most of us live a rather safe life. Argentina makes you courageous, makes you also taking risks, because there's nothing you can count on, and you don't know if you can buy a bread today if the bread is not 5 times as much tomorrow. That means you take totally different decisions, and I'm very proud, and my compliment to you, and thank you for being here, doing the workshop and sharing all your wisdom, knowledge, and friendship with us. Thank you, Lolly.
Okay. So hi everyone. I'm really happy to be here. I haven't done this before in this way. So my idea today is to share a bit of how the studio works. Mostly, it's not a linear thing, but a general way of working. Like it is said, I'm from Argentina. It's at the end of the continent, and we share the length with Chile. It's a continent that speaks the same language, well, except for Brazil, so there's a common identity. And like I read there's 46 million of us. We're the country number 8 in size, and there are at the moment 15 languages, so many nations, and of course we speak Spanish. It's a very mixed nation country, so that is part of our identity. There's not one identity. So anyway, Argentina, like it is said, has lots of ups and downs, so making a professional practice can be quite an adventure, and that made me adapt a lot. And in this, I would say sometimes erratic behavior, I needed things to be comfortable and be safe for work. I've changed the studio enough so that I went from commercial clients to government, for public spaces, for private wealthy clients, and to opera performances. So in that change, I had to figure out, or we had to figure out, because I work with a team, what defined us and what were our lines of interest. That changes a lot, and I'm going to share a bit about that. So the first time, like Heidi said, I'm an architect, and the first time I had an idea of what I wanted my practice to be was 2013, so 12 years ago. I worked with this studio of Argentinians. We were making a project at PS1, and these 2 architects were architects that could build, and so that brought me to the idea that I wanted to work in a scale where I could build myself, so that got me close to furniture or small architecture. And then I enjoyed tools, and I wanted my space, my working space, to be a shop, wood shop. So those things made me understand what kind of day like DAY, what I wanted my day to be like. That was really helpful. The studio is now, this is all of us up here. This is the studio we have, and even if it's a wood studio, I don't have big machines because I outsource most of that because the investment I needed was too big, too much, like to have kind of the wood shop you have now. So I figured I could process most of the wood outside and start working on projects. And I'm gonna show a few projects in unchronological order. So this one is, like it is said, we teach in prison. So it's a male prison. And the project here is about how to talk about construction and how you develop construction thinking. This is a very closed space. Of course, we have almost no tools. And what we did here was trying to design objects for specific needs. And these specific needs are, even if you're making a table, sometimes it's a table where the parents, the fathers will meet their kids. So this untrained, because they were not architects or designers, would come up with furniture for a closed environment. I go there because I have a genuine interest in how people design when they have to for everyday life. Designing is part of, construction is part of life everywhere, so that has to do a lot with intuitive construction. And my next project here would be, this is a project we've been working on for many years, and these are all locker rooms we found in a crystal factory. Each person would make their own lockers, and these are furniture found like this in rural towns. And what I found really interesting was how a person can build on an everyday basis, like I said. So we made research on all the joints and made all this collection here. So uses are for domestic use, and we did not design anything that people had not designed before us. So maybe the shelves work, they're sliding shelves. The joints are with nails. And very simple construction. These are the pieces we made. So once we processed all the information, we came up with this one system, 2 sections, one system, and we documented everything. And then we decided to think about, well, of course, the do-it-yourself movement and all the writing that's been done around that, and how you can give information for someone to make these designs. In this case, these are all the pieces disassembled, and these are the sliding shelves, like I said before. Now this brought us into how we acquire this wood and how we process it into 3 measurements so that you can make infinite designs. Okay. Within that same thinking, we were collaborating with an opera company. Sorry, this is Elisa. And at some point, they needed to design lights for their performances. And of course, there was no budget for the dimmering lights. And after a design show, I found we had all these tubes that a friend of mine makes, and he had provided for the show. And they show up at my studio. And so the theater director needed some lights. So we came up with these boxes, and I wanted to dimmerize the lights manually. So this is the first version we made, and this is the performance. So performers and musicians would operate on the lights, and they would move them around during the play. This is a company that is made of musicians and singers from the opera house we have at home, which is an amazing opera house, but they do opera outside the theater, so maybe like a gym on the streets or a very different neighborhood. So they will tell me what they need for the play. We go through the script and we try to understand what's happening. And it's not traditional set designing because the spaces are very different. So, so they needed, at some point, the magician had to make the light come up. And I'm going to show you how it works. These are the plans. We usually draw at the end of the process. We don't make drawings before that. The way this works is baja. So that version we made there, it's like proper wood, and it's now in a museum. So sometime in the middle of these crazy things, maybe low budget things we were doing, people started connecting with work and understanding the piece as something that relates to us, our identity. I don't know what happened. So yeah, it became a product on its own. But not because we're designing a product by itself, but more of an action for the theater. Then on these action thing, these performing things, I had made this chair for my Swedish friend Bettina. She's a designer. She needed to make a chair, and I was only the maker, so we were prototyping this. And when you build something for someone else, you get rid of the design process, and it's really easy because it's somebody else's idea, and you get to just focus on the construction. And then we were talking earlier today when we were designing the chair. Of course, the one thing you have to decide, you have to figure out when you're designing a chair, the hardest part is this joint and how you're going to make that happen. And then the truth is, this chair is it's not possible to make it without the technology of a factory, because if you have to bend, I mean, the designer made a decision without thinking of construction, of how it's going to be made. Either you set up a bending area in your shop, and then is it worth doing it for selling purposes? So in this case, I was enjoying the prototyping. So a little time passed, and I wanted to make a chair, and I had many of these. So this is 15 centimeters by 15 centimeters, which is 5/8 of an inch. And I had way too many of these wood and long pieces. And this is kiri wood, which is a Japanese wood introduced in our country for paper making. There was, like, Edis was telling, they were trying to promote these plantations for big factories that made paper, and then sometimes the economy crashed, and all these woods were left for furniture design, but this is for construction or furniture. But this is very light wood. It grows really fast. It has the best rate at transforming carbon dioxide, but it's not exactly great for making a table that's going to be crushed. So I had way too many of these really long things. And one day, I came up with this piece, which is the leg and the sitting part. And once you figure out that, and then how this happens, you see it just finishes there. And then you just make a 360 array, and you have the whole chair. So once you figure out one thing, and that kind of works for many things. I made these after work. I stayed behind, and I wanted to make a chair without nails or mortise and tenor because my shop is very simple. And so I was like, how do I make a chair with something so thin? And I thought, I'm gonna work with this 3x3. And I'm gonna go empty and fill so I can insert. So I made this, and then the following week, I had some days off at the shop. He's Agustin, he used to work with me. And I told him we were going to make this chair. And the thing was, so these are the legs that are starting to show up. The thing was, since it was a prototype, I said, we're gonna use our intuition to work with this, to make a chair, and we're not gonna use computers or, how do you say the measuring tape. And so what we did was we came up with this ruler that has the same, the width of the piece, and we used this ruler to measure everything up. Like we were talking earlier, we got rid of a chair should have this height or this width. And it was more of an exercise. And I said, we have 2 days to make it, and that's it. So we came up with this chair, which is you can dematerialize as you get to the ground, and then you can make voids and put this inside, right? And of course, I'm an architect, so it was like column and beams and platform. So it's really close to architecture, and I don't know, it looks like Japanese architecture or just, yeah. So this is the chair, which of course, so this is the thing I made first, our ruler, and then the chair itself. So it's really hard to make. It does not work well with the market because it would take forever. I can make maybe a few and sell them like collection pieces, but it does not work as a design chair. Since we were so close to the architect object, so we finally documented and we can build it now. But we cannot make the whole production system of the jigs and structures to make it. So maybe sometimes, I don't know. So what we're using this now, we're working with, let me see where it is. We're working with an engineer that specializes in wood, and it's a mock-up to research the tensions within a chair. So we have 7 different joints, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and with him, we analyze as if it was an architect piece. And we use this just for research and to get together, have some wine with fellow designers and talk about how you would think this project. All of this because I cannot sell it in like product. Most of our decisions are made intuitively because I would feel like this is going to bend. So this engineer, he says like, what you're saying makes sense or it doesn't, or you didn't count on this, or if you switch this and that. So it's interesting how all of this is happening within a chair that is, well, very similar to architecture. So here he's making some improvements. Let me see. Also, when I started the studio, I had to deal with, oh, it's running away. I had to deal with my ego, and that's something that as designers, maker, or architects, it's really interesting to know that about oneself. I used to make small pieces, and I was doing really well doing objects for domestic use during COVID especially, and whatever piece we made, we would sell. And I remember people around me would say, like, you should keep on doing this. This is good. I mean, you're good at this. And I didn't want to be the architect that made small things, so I wanted to make something big. And again, that's like the ego talking, and it's good to be aware of it. So at some point when COVID was about to be done, I had an architect, and he said, like, I would like to build this. And this is like a SketchUp project, and this was his idea of how to build this. And he said, like, can you build it? And I said, like, yeah, I used to have a smaller shop, like really, really small. I was like, okay, I can do this, but we have to make it in parts, and we have to work on this. So I said, like, we'll take a whole year to research on this. Now, the idea, again, was done by someone else, and that someone else was dealing with the client, so I had gotten rid of that. And what happened was we had to figure out how to make a business out of this, how to plan the investment, and that means that you, as an architect, are dealing with someone else's money, which is something that you don't really talk about at university, or we didn't, at least. And the thing is, because the architect had not made any proposal concerning structure or material or how to make it, I was at the beginning of decisions. And when you're at the beginning of decisions, a bad decision just spreads out the whole project. So the thing here for me was, how do I make good decisions that will work in the future? And so to me, it was, I have to choose the exact type of wood, and I have to check how to build these in parts, and I have to be able to ship this into the mountains, because this was happening in the mountains. So a year later, what we did was go from this to this. Now, I had 2 engineers helping me with this, but they did not make design comments. They would only check what we did, what we would propose. And the thing is, so if you see here, there's 1 column, 2 beams. You say beams, right? The horizontal, 2 beams, 1 column, 2 beams. So there's like 7 pieces. So we had to go from 7 pieces to these, which are like, I don't know, something like 23 every ray. And the thing here is, you only have to design 1 thing, and then 360, you have to array it so that it works. And that was the project. It was very, very simple. So again, what we proposed here was to make a way of, and this is very common architecture. I'm not inventing anything, but to the architect, he hadn't figured it out. And so we had to make these voids and fills so that we can make fake mortise and tenons and structure the whole thing. And then, so this wasn't part of the project, and this wasn't. So once you extend it, it just sits straight. Then I found a company that made all the screws and joints, especially for wood, and that was another good decision from the beginning, because you have to sell good decisions to clients right at the beginning. You can just show up 10 months later, oh, I'm going to do this, and they freak out. This is how we produced it, and then we had to ship it on trucks, like 1,000 K, so that would be 600 miles, probably. And in the end, we had to set it up with another team on site. So, well, this is a project that worked perfectly. And it was mostly because we even designed how to put, like, where the screws were supposed to go. Yeah. We did a lot of pre-production. So this is how it was sent. This is a mock-up we did at the studio. Because sometimes computer is not enough, this is how it was built. So it actually happened, it's there. So that was an example of scale. And yeah, my ego was happy by then. Another thing that we worked, and this is something we talked today in class. These are the small pieces we used to make during COVID. We still make them. And some 20 years ago, I was at a ballet performance, and this poem came to mind. And for whatever reason, it totally made sense with, I don't know, with what I want or what I think. And it talked about certain things, and like materials and carbon, and I don't know, it just made sense. But the thing is, there's a word here that describes something in disarray, which is pêle-mêle. And like we were saying earlier, because some of you were earlier today with us, and this gives the idea of something that makes sense but doesn't make sense, and it's a collection of things that are at the shop. And so, like we were talking earlier, I use a lot of concepts that come from other people or other, well, that's contemporary art anyway, stealing words from other things. But I don't know, sometimes you find comfort in the fact that someone else is thinking things. Then another project we made, well, most of the projects, the things we make now, the smaller pieces, are, I would say, an unwanted study that it just happens like that, of pieces that contain or display other objects. And this has to do with how an object can give hierarchy to something else. Of course, these are popular altars we find back home, and you see them on the highways and in everybody's houses. So I'm really interested in how an object can contain another object, and how the object that's being contained is actually important because of that action. In that search, we've made some altars, some stands, and some plinths. And these are glass. This is crystal. This is a crystal piece that we made with in a crystal factory. And I'm going to show you this because I'm really in love with this. So I had been to Sweden, and there's a place, I don't remember the name, it's like a theme park that shows all craft. You've been there? Maybe, I think so. Like, it's a... See? Yeah, that. And so, of course, I was obsessed because I was born on the wrong century, but I had seen these wooden molds for crystal blowing, and of course I took some pictures and I did some research. And then the following year we showed up at the last crystal factory that we have in South America. I was with my partner and we were making some pieces, so we kept going year after year. And then one day my partner says, I'm gonna go work at the crystal place, and he had like the workers schedule, so he would wake up 4 in the morning and go working, and he went from being a boss to being like the first worker, like the beginners. So that was interesting, and I would follow around, of course. And then so we came up with this mold to blow crystal, and I had been wondering about this crystal cover that will keep something. And if you use a wooden mold, as opposed to a metal one that you just swirled it will have texture. So I was thinking about how you put something behind the crystal, but it's hard to see, so you protect it, but there's a see, not see situation. Anyway, I liked it. So this mold I made again in Kiri, so this is the wood I used before. And because when you blow something from above, there's a bottom and it sits there, so it has like this thickness that you can tell it's the base. And I didn't want that, so we came up with these pieces so that each piece would sit differently. And so when they blow from the top, they would have all these different shapes. Now, each one at the studio came up with one, so the studio works in a way like that we have a common language, and everyone can create within that language. So as long as it makes sense, it's like a music band. You kind of play the type of music that the band is playing. I'm going to show you this for... So this is the model. This is how it works. And again, we make very simple things because I can't afford to make a mold just to see if I sell, you know. He was checking that they worked, because once you're at the factory, things happen very fast. We had tried something like this before. I had to make extra holes so that the crystal wouldn't explode in there. And this is, well, the sun is coming out, so this would be like 6 in the morning. You have to put it in the bucket so the mold is wet when you do that. And this is a bigger piece of glass. as opposed to, of course, the wine glasses they make. This is the master, or the boss, the chief. Yeah. And you see, it's a factory that was started by Italian immigrants some 100 years ago, and it evolved, it became big, and now it's almost not out of work, but there used to be 200 workers, and now you have like maybe 40. And this is a really interesting moment when as a designer, you come up with the idea and then you confront yourself with real knowledge of what you're saying. Like sometimes you design something that bends on every, and then the people building it will say like, well, that makes or doesn't make sense. So there's an interesting conversation between the master of that craftsmanship and one as a designer that you have to empathize and understand what's happening. I went to this place many times before proposing because I didn't want to be making, designing from the computer, or I don't know. This is the mold as it was. Oh, that's my boyfriend, sorry. And this is the piece itself. So you see, so sometimes these projects work as an idea of something that already exists. The crystal things already exist, and there's history behind it. Then there's material, and there's like this knowledge behind it that's not mine. And then, so I really enjoy mixing everything and learning from something and deciding on this and not deciding, like I think like different levels. And then, of course, I have to make a project, a product, and sell it. So I need all these stories. Like so far, I use a lot of this storytelling, not storytelling, because it's not a linear thing. But I need to be able to show this at a gallery, and yeah. Let me see if I have something else. These other pieces we made, which are very simple, but really easy to sell. And there's a story that sometimes I tell or sometimes I don't. We made these in the beginning, and then as time went by, we start like putting some order. And then we just document so they can go into production. Then a gallerist told me, like, why don't you make it extra big? And of course, this is like, people go crazy, they want to buy them. And this is like maybe 3 years after that. And so I wouldn't probably not be able to make the big ones from the beginning because I have to invest my own money to that. So it's a growing thing so that when I go extra large, I already have it really sharpened the process at the studio. And the story behind this is like I was obsessed with these pieces that we talked earlier today. These are mojon. I don't know how to say this in English. So these are the military objects that are spread. This is Argentina, so very flat place. These objects were spread throughout Patagonia when the military campaigns were pushing the boundaries south to make room for all the landowners they needed. And okay, part of a story. And there's a metal thing that you can go to prison if you remove it, but you might find them now. They don't mean much now, but you might find them like wherever. You might be like a farmer can find it, and like we were talking earlier, many of our borders are like straight lines. This is a river, but this is like, I don't know, some parallel, like again here. So the thing is, I was obsessed with the idea of how a piece of stone can suddenly determine something, and how is this piece given so much power that a place begins and finishes. And that was what I wanted to think about when I go to sleep. And I will probably go and read some of the military campaigns, and it's really hard to throw everything into the piece, but I know it's there. So the reason I made these vertical things, someone said it's like a totem, like a phallic thing from history. It's like, no, it has nothing to do with that. It's just how crazy it is that a piece of stone can decide and how those pieces will end up defining history and human histories, you know? So it was I don't know, like you're on my side, I'm on your side. It's weird. Let me see if I have something else. Then, no, it's good. I'm not forgetting anything. Good. Yeah, the brushes. Yeah. These are some brushes. I don't know where they are, the final thing, but these are the tails of some brushes. So the thing is, I wanted to make some brushes with horsehair. I'm going to show them to you now. But I didn't have, this is incienso, so it's like a very, really hard wood that we have, like really, really thick and dense. And I wanted to make a brush, so I needed a square section, but I didn't have that square section. I had a long 1x2. So I was like, how am I going to do this? I can chop and glue it together, and I have a 2x2. And I could chop like every two and overlap them. And then I was like, oh, what happens if I just go 90 degrees? So I have the grain, and I don't know how to say it in English, and this happened. So it actually all began because I needed a piece of wood that I didn't have. I'm going to see if I can, I didn't have this. I didn't think of this, sorry. Okay, no. Okay, I'll show you later because I don't know where it is. Anyway, this overlapping of structures is also like really long pieces of wood in really bad shape, bad state. So we chop them and we make towels. These are going to be plinths. And the thing that I'm inspired, or what I take from, is the Jesuits missions that we have in the north part of the country. You've been there, Iris, no? Yeah. So the way they construct, they came up with this, and this is an area that has no stone. And these are the missions that were built in the northern part of Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay, and Brazil. It was like the resistance to the legal way Spain had to of occupying our territories. So this was like a nation within Vice Kingdom. So it was a very utopian way where there were imposed ways of living, but the ratio was maybe a couple priests and 3,000 Guarani people. So there's a crossing of European architecture with local thinking and local materials. And I'm obsessed with Baroque music, so I don't know, this makes sense to me. In that sense, you can find, I don't know, like we were talking earlier today, you sometimes find things to expand. Let me see if I can. So there's music about that. There's recordings of that. So I'm going to see if this works. I know, sorry, not here. There's also writings about this. There's a book written in 1553 about how these places were run. So there's like anthropology, there's history, and I draw from everything. It doesn't mean I make a very, like, the most thorough research, because we're designers. I'm not a scientist, so yeah. I don't want to keep you on that. And then the last project I'm going to show you, and I'm going to end up with a video. I applied for a residency 2 years ago in Portugal. And so this is a project. This is all of my projects, like we were talking earlier, the whole, my personal iCloud, I guess, which may or may not make sense. So I applied to this residency, and my project, like we were talking earlier, my contract was making furniture inspired by folk furniture, like I had done in Argentina, but I wanted to do that in Portugal. I thought it was really good since we have so much influence from the Hispanic, from the peninsula. But once I got there, the residency took place in what had been a factory of rope factory made of plants, of fiber. And of course I had been obsessed with, of course not, but I had been obsessed with ropes and plants for a long time because I'm also interested in all the colonial history, but not only as in history itself, but how plants had been moved around continents and how plants show up alongside the same latitude, and how that transforms economies, and I don't know. And I really like making rope, that's another thing. So I started doing research on that, and there was a lot of information in the residency, so I changed subjects, and I started studying all these transfer of plants, and how what was extracted from the colonies as a raw matter went right into the industry. And where the residency was happening was what had been the factory itself. So all the machines had been saved into a museum. I was going crazy with all that. I could see how that, I could understand how those factories worked. I had seen them in videos. I had never seen them live. And this allowed me to think of many things happening around plants, like the transfer and non-transfer of information, like what happens when something is extracted from one place and goes into the other one, what information is lost. And that can be, for example, all the plants that were brought into Europe from the Americas, that had medicinal knowledge, and then once they go through the ocean, that is lost. And of course, I'm not going to make a whole research like a botanist, but I was obsessed. I had been to many botanical gardens in Europe, which are the most, like the perfect example of colonialism in plants and how they're organized in different climates. And I don't know, I went crazy with that idea. So I did all this research, and I was collecting plants, and I was doing some ropes with plants within the residency. This residency, like I said, this place, like I said, had been full of factories that around the 70s, they were all uprooted, and they moved to Asia. And so all the residuals of the factories had been left there. And so it was like a landscape, really toxic. We couldn't walk there, and there was resin everywhere. And plants were growing within resin because 50 years had gone by. So that was like the resistance of the plants and how they will grow. Maybe no matter what we do, they will continue to outlive us. And then I wrote a text about all of these I'm not a writer or anything, so I wrote a text. It was so hard for me that I ended writing it down on an Excel sheet. And once I did that, because I'm too much of an architect, I was like, okay, this is my poem, not poem. And the text is written in Spanish, and it talks about the uprooting and what happens when you take something and, like, I would say land or Mother Earth is talking like they took you away from me, and once you go to another place, new minerals you will be made by new minerals. You will forget your tongue. I don't know. I kept on babbling about it. Yeah, it's in English. I can read it to you, but I'm going to show you something first. So I wrote it in Spanish, and there's something that happens to us. Like I said, Argentina has 15 languages, and I am, well, I don't know. It's a very mixed country, but I cannot speak my languages. So I speak 4 European languages and none of my own. So I was like, this should not be in Spanish, should not be in English. So I met up with an artist that she's from South Africa, and she's recovering her mother tongue, which is Xhosa, I don't know how to say it. So we worked in the distance, and the Spanish text, I moved into English, and she worked together with her aunt, and they interpret the English version without me saying what it was about. So I said nothing.
Is it with a click sound?
Well, yeah, I'll show you. Because maybe our design gives you the freedom to, and I feel good with these decisions. I'm gonna show you the video. This is the video I made, and okay, that's my dad. Yeah. I'm sorry. So this is the setup. I made a video with my phone, and I recorded all this. So what you're going to see are all the surface of the landfills, the abandoned places. And this had been abandoned like 50 years ago, and this is what you could see.
Ndive, ndikhala, ndibhomboloza. Ngolwandle unyamalele, wemkisela, wasithela ngenqanawe, kwasala umzila wakho, wena wenya. Uwelele watshona empelazwe, bakuthathile phakade lam, apho kuhamba khona igazi lam. Uphi? Uphi? Laphuma ilanga likukhangela, nekhwezi alakubhaqa. Namanzi elinxwemeni awucima umzila wakho. Kungekudala saba kunye kwelizayo. Ndakukhuliswa wasuswa kum. Sowuthetha lwimi lumbi, hayi olu lwethu. Uyalibala. Nawe ndiyathetha, wena awundiva, awundiqondi. Uphantsi kolunye ulawulo, wangiwe zezinye izandla. Uthetha ngelitsha ilizwi, kwimithambo yakho kubaleka igazi elitsha, bakuthatha kum. Andinakuze ndiphinde ndikuchukumise, kwiinkumbulo uhleli. Ndaphukile, ndiphelelwe, amalungu am avekivekile. Lusandingqongile olwa lwandle lwakuthathayo. Ikwaloliya lwandle ndingakuthiya. Iinkumbulo zam zemka nomoya. Zibuya ziyintlokoma evaka kude. Mhlawumbi kwakuba ngonaphakade ndicinga ngawe ukuze ndingakulibali. Xa ushiya eli uwelela kwelizayo. Kum awunakubuyela. Imvula ziya kukuntyulisela enzulwini. Ndithi lulwandle uhlala usoyisa. Akukho mntu unokukoyisa. Ke ngoku ndomile, ndingumhlaba, ndiyanika kuphela.
So the thing about this project was that it allowed me to talk about something I've been interested in, these movements of plants. And then you can expand and you can be very extreme. And I'm not a filmmaker, I'm not a writer, and I'm not a textile designer. However, sometimes these projects allow you to do some research in a different way, because something will come up. And of course, for me, the best part of this was working with Siviwek, which is someone I've never seen in person. So anyway, that was the project itself. The text is here. I don't know if it's worth reading or just, I don't think it should be read as in her voice and her singing about was just perfect, I guess. She wrote it down for me, but who knows? The other thing is like when other languages are assimilated, there's so much knowledge or thinking that is lost, that I kind of like the idea of maybe she translated a totally different poem. So yeah. Anyway, if someone wants it, I can share it. So anyway, what we were talking earlier today, our practice is like this massive, forever growing process of information, and we usually draw from that into the project. And well, maybe, yeah, that was it. Hope you liked it.
Well, because I was just so, I mean, thank you so much for that. It was really beautiful way to talk about the work. Sure. In following from today and the way you described your practice, it was really great. I was so struck by the curiosity, like the idea that, like how many things you're obsessed with and curious about, and like following those leads and following those prompts and not constricting yourself to a specific maybe bias or predetermined kind of approach to something. But I was wondering, and I think that's so important for design, because for anybody, just to trust that, it takes a lot of trust to kind of follow these things that may or may not lead where you thought. But I was curious if that process for you is different. You do different kinds of work. Some is sort of your own, under your own guidance. Some is architects or other designers designed and you're constructing, and some maybe for clients or for performances. And I was wondering if that process adjusts at all in these different ways of working, or maybe the way you communicate that changes, or maybe not. I don't know. I was curious.
Yes. The thing is, I tend to think of this as either sports or music. So with design, I don't think we have the role so very much designed as you think of the designer has to do everything. But sometimes I operate as a producer, so I focus on production. Sometimes as a general director, so I focus on the bigger thing. The thing is, you have different timelines. So if I'm at the beginning of the process, my timeline is further, so I will think 2 years. So I have to make good decisions today that will affect in 2 years. So my time is different. When you're making something, so the kids that work at the studio, they're in the absolute present, or at least 2-3 weeks. The guy that runs my studio will be telling me, like, we're gonna run out of glue in a month, or something like that. So we have different timelines. And the thing is, when we're designing, it's really interesting to understand what the task is and what timeline you are. So if you were in a sports situation, you could be the tactical person, or you can be the person fixing muscles. So those are different things. And maybe the thing with designers or artists that you're moving around a lot. So I don't think that this happens to anyone. In my case, because my studio is very small and I go up and I expand or not, I tend to get rid of certain decisions so I can focus on the bigger timeline and the mid timeline. And then I have to leave room for what I really like. So I was carving a few bowls the other day, which is something I would never do because it's like a totally present thing. But I give myself that, okay, this is, I'm gonna be carving these little rods. I think that unless you work for a company that has a job description, maybe, I don't know people that work in companies could maybe help me with this. I've never done that, so that time is different or tasks are different. What we're doing, you have to do everything. I design the webpage, I design the invoices, so sometimes I make very precise things and then sometimes very general. The thing is, when you're precise, you can adjust better, so if you make a mistake on the small thing, you can reprint. But if you make bad decisions on bigger problems, that affects the whole future. I was telling Edith the other day, there's a coach of our national rugby team. He said something the other day that I think a lot. So he said, I have to talk to my team before the game so that they make good decisions once the game has started, that I cannot access the field. And I think a lot about that in my studio. How do I code what we need so that the group understands the major task, the due day, and what are the red flags, and what is not terrible. So it's kind of like a game in a way, how you operate. And I'm thinking in the studio, because I don't get to do that much, everything, I mean, I'm modeling hands and I'm operating on human beings. So you have to be very careful and very thorough, and then a person can do a lot more than a tool, because a tool you can, you can use it in a different way, but a human being as a tool, it's like pretty, I don't know, anything can happen. But you have to prompt the right way, if that makes sense. So there's a lot of, it's also almost like a theater play. You say this, and the same thing goes with clients, which are the worst part of everything, so. We always think of like, so when you're hiking and you have the lifeline, which is the last, you can't undo everything. So what are as a group, as a team, what are our safe lines? Like, how do we always grow? Like, we have many setbacks at home. Like, anything can happen. My country devaluated yesterday, so all of my projects, all my profit, I don't know what happened. So what's my safe line? Survival 101. Yeah. Yes.
I'm curious about when you talked about setting up a language so everyone in your studio can play within that language.
So I can't hear.
Oh, you talked about setting up a language, a design language, so that the work from your studio can be consistent.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how you outline the language, or what parameters you set for yourself? Is that changing constantly, or how's
First off, like the first year, they will just work a lot. It also has to do with performance and how we have, say, we go from general to the detail. So that's something that will always happen. So everyone will assess the major plan and go into detail. That's something that kind of like the language for work. And then there's some things like we have a regional identity. We're not, as in the southern part of Argentina, maybe the geography, the materials that we use, the local industry. This is not a critic, but I would never go to Milan for Design Week. I would never use that unless I'm showing what we're doing, which is a different thing. We don't do much of global north reading because we've done enough, and in university I studied enough, so we need to balance things out. I don't know, because that's a counteraction, because our universities were so European centralized, so the thinking, so like I showed, it's what happened. It's not denying things, but it's like what happened to the missions and how was Baroque creativity happening in theater. Like there's a really good Mexican writer that's called Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, and what her texts were about, even if you are part of a universal style or thinking, like what is produced. And we do a lot of that. And then it just happens. I don't know. I don't think any of the guys would say, let's 3D print this, because we work a lot with perfecting the hand. We're going back to doing things a bit more rough, because someone said, I thought your pieces were made by a 3D 3D router thing. I was like, oh, we're in trouble. So we went back to like the textile weavers, leave that one mistake so that it's human. Mostly in how the shop behaves. Like, yeah, interesting. Yeah. Yeah, those are the brushes. So that's, we cut the hair in summer to all the horses so that they don't get it tangled with the spin. Yeah, shit. And I was curious how the brushes were made, and so I started, I don't know, sewing that. Yeah.
Well, you can see it, but it's really beautiful to see the pedestal.
Yeah. Like I said, it's little obsessions. I'm obsessed with the plinth, the whole, like, I don't know if you've seen the plinths here outside the library. So there was a time when the object that held the other one has so much, and you're a statue because there's a plinth. I mean, I'm holding you, statue, something like that. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. No, thank you.